So at the Firepower Management Center, we're currently on the Overview tab. We're going to click on Devices, and then we're going to select the sub-tab of NAT, and that is right here. So we'll click Devices and then NAT, and there's no default NAT policies in place. So what we're going to do is we are going to create one using this icon right over here. We're going to create a new NAT policy. And from the drop down, we have two options. Firepower NAT, which is for the legacy source fire stuff, and then Threat Defense NAT, which is absolutely what we want, Threat Defense NAT. So we'll click on Threat Defense NAT. We'll name it our NAT policy, and we only have one Firepower Threat Defense appliance, FTD1, so we'll add it to this policy, and then click on Save. So wow, we're making progress. We've got a NAT policy, but that NAT policy doesn't say to NAT anything. So what we get to do is we get to create at least one rule and put it in this policy that says if traffic is coming in on an interface associated with the inside zone and it's being routed out an interface associated with the outside zone, let's go ahead and do PAT. We'll overload on the exit or egress interface. And just as a reminder of the three sections, here they are. So as we create NAT rules, we can do manual NAT rules before the auto NAT, or manual NAT rules after the auto NAT, or we can dump all of our NAT rules right in the middle and let the system sort those rules out in that auto NAT section. Again, the three sections are just to give us additional control of which NAT rules get priority based on where they're placed. So we're going to create a new auto NAT rule, and we'll do that by clicking on the Add Rule right over here. So we'll click on Add Rule. From the drop down, we'll specify that this is a auto NAT rule, and for the type, it's going to be dynamic. So from the drop down for the type, we'll select dynamic, and it's dropping us to the translation tab, but I'm going to go far left. Let's go to the interface objects, and let's take a look at the zones that we want this policy to apply to. And it's pretty straightforward. There's a section here that says source and destination. This is part of our if statement regarding this policy for NAT. And what we want to do is if traffic comes in the firewall on an interface that's associated with the inside zone, which where Lois and Bob and those other users would be coming into the firewall on that gig 0/1 interface, and if that traffic is going to be routed out of the outside interface on the firewall, so we'll add that to destination. That's why routing is so darn important. Then what do you want to do? And to tell the firewall the results of what we want to have happen if traffic does follow that flow from a NAT perspective, then we go to translation. So here on the left, we're going to identify the original packet. And if the original object doesn't represent a subnet that you want to identify, just create the object, identify the subnet you're interested in, and then use it. They have some built-in objects, and one of those is the 10 network. Here we go, the 10.0.0/8, and that's perfect. So now as far as the original packet, if the source address is 10 anything, we're going to translate that to, and from the drop-down, I'm going to specify destination IP. Now that refers to the destination IP address of whatever IP address is configured on the egress interface. That's the interface the firewall is going to actually send the packet out of that's going to be used by the firewall. So if we had 10 interfaces and they're all part of the outside zone, it could be any one of those 10 interfaces depending on which one the firewall used to forward the packet out to the internet. And that's it. We don't have to select NAT pool or any other features. We've got it set. If traffic is being sourced and coming into the firewall on the inside zone and it's being routed out the outside zone, then translate the source address. If it's in the 10 network, translate it to the IP address on the egress or outgoing interface of the firewall. And we'll click on OK. Then all we need to do is click on Save. And then I have a question for you. In order for our firewall to really use this policy, what else do we need to do to make this work? And if you're saying, Keith, we need to deploy it, you'd be absolutely right. So if we click on Deploy here, and then we'll select FTD1 and expand him just to verify that what he's going to be getting. So he's getting an updated NAT policy, perfect. And we'll click on Deploy. Now, in the background, that's going to take a few moments to do. So while that cooks, let's go take a look at the console of FTD. And here at the console, let's do this. Let's do a show NAT, and we'll do a show xlate. Xlate is an abbreviation for translation. At the moment I ran this command, we don't yet have any NAT rules in place. That'll change here in a moment once the deployment is complete. And also, we don't have any translations in use. So let's do this. Let's go to our virtual machine that's on that 10.1 network. And let's do a ping out to www.google.com. Just the fact that name resolution worked is fantastic. So that traffic is going out. Also, we could do I'll do a Control C. We'll do a trace route dash and we'll go to www.google.com. And then let's go back and look at the firewall. So back at the firewall, if we do a show NAT, now it's going to show us the NAT rules that currently are in use because the policy was finally deployed. And if we do a show xlate, it'll show us the current translations that are currently in use on that firewall. And some of this UDP is due to traceroute. So in Linux, when it does a traceroute, it utilizes UDP. When a Windows does traceRT, it uses ICMP. It's also showing us that paths being used, port address translation, from the inside at 10.1.0.101. That's the real IP address of the host machine being mapped on the outside to this IP address, 23.1.2.7. So that, my friend, is an example of how we can set up a NAT policy on the firewall appliance. I hope this has been informative for you, and I'd like to thank you for viewing.